Most of us at some point are going to notice it. Blurry vision. Maybe it's the board at the front of the classroom, or maybe it's the tiny text on your phone. Well, that lack of sharpness actually has a name. It's called an error of refraction. And today, we're going to break down the surprisingly simple physics behind why our eyes sometimes just miss the mark. I mean, have you ever stopped to really think about why? Why do some of us need glasses to see things far away, while for others, it's all about reading up close? It's not just some random thing that happens. There's actually a fascinating and pretty straightforward physical explanation for all of it. When you boil it all down, blurry vision comes from a simple mismatch. But that simple mismatch can have some really complex consequences. And to really get to the bottom of it, we're going to be pulling our information from one of the absolute pillars in the field, Kinsofsky's clinical ophthalmology. So, before we can even talk about what goes wrong, we've got to define what it looks like when everything goes perfectly right. What is the eye actually trying to do? What's the end goal? Well, the clinical term for that perfect state is emmetropia. And you can think of it as just perfect optical harmony. The length of your eyeball, from the very front to the very back, is in perfect sync with the focusing power of your cornea and lens. When that happens, light comes in and lands precisely on the retina, giving you a crystal clear image. That's the ideal we're aiming for. Okay, so if emmetropia is the ideal state, the perfect balance, then a refractive error is, well, any time we deviate from that. So let's see exactly what that looks like. And this right here shows the whole story. With perfect vision, light hits its target. Bang, right on the retina. But with a refractive error, it misses. It either focuses in front of the retina, which gives you nearsightedness, or it focuses behind it, which is farsightedness. And the root cause is always that same fundamental problem, a mismatch between the eye's physical length and its optical power. It's a straight-up physics problem. Now, to really understand just how big of a deal this mismatch can be, let's look at a pretty extreme and serious example. Let's talk about degenerative myopia. Now, we're not just talking about needing a stronger pair of glasses here. Degenerative myopia is a progressive condition where the eyeball literally stretches and gets longer from front to back. When you see an axial length greater than 26 millimeters, well, that's a huge deviation, and the consequences are so severe that this is actually a major cause of legal blindness. So, why is that stretching so bad? The crucial thing to understand is what's happening to the tissues inside. As the book puts it, it's all about mechanical stretching. Think about it. The eye's delicate tissues, like the retina that senses light and all the blood vessels behind it, they were never designed to be stretched that far. And that physical stress is what leads to the degeneration and, ultimately, the loss of vision. And this brings us to a really critical takeaway. A refractive error isn't just some isolated problem with focus. That core physical mismatch in the eye's length, it has ripple effects across all of ophthalmology. And yeah, these consequences go way beyond just a blurry view of the world. Take something as common as cataract surgery. To get the calculation right for the new lens implant, the IOL, you absolutely have to know the eye's length. For eyes that are really long or really short, that calculation gets a whole lot harder. Or think about strabismus or an eye turn in kids. A big refractive error can be one of the key things that throws off the brain's ability to keep the eyes working together. Okay, so we've got this fundamental physical mismatch. The good news? The paths to managing and correcting these errors are incredibly well established. So what can we do about it? The most common solutions are probably things you've heard of a million times. Spectacles and contact lenses. They basically add an external lens to fix the focus. Then you've got surgeries like LASIK, which do the same thing but by permanently changing the shape of the cornea. But for me, the most exciting stuff is happening in management, especially with kids. We now have strategies like low-dose atropine eye drops that can actually slow down how fast myopia gets worse while the eye is still growing. That's a real game changer. So how common is that severe degenerative myopia we were just talking about? Well, in Western adult populations, the prevalence is over 2%. Now, that might not sound like a huge number, but that's more than 1 out of every 50 people dealing with this really serious progressive condition. But wait, the story gets even more interesting. The rate changes dramatically depending on where you are in the world. It can climb as high as 10% in some parts of East Asia. This is a huge clue that tells us both our genes and our environment are playing a big role here. And all of this leaves us with one last and I think really important question to chew on. We know that things like spending less time outdoors can be a risk factor for myopia. So as our lives, our work, our schools, our social lives move more and more indoors and onto screens, are we basically setting the stage for this severe form of refractive error to become an even bigger public health crisis for the next generation? It's definitely something to think about.